In today's episode, we have with us Dr. Indra Rama Rao, a profound sociologist, a field activist, and a professor who has decades of experience and field research. In today's conversation, she'll be sharing her insights and field work with us. Good afternoon, ma'am.
Good afternoon.
Ma'am, in today's episode of podcast, we are exploring the concept of intimate partner violence. What inspired you to explore this concept as a sociologist and a field activist?
See, as a student of sociology, the system of inequality always bothered me. Inequality based on gender especially cuts across all barriers of caste, class, location, etc. But I did not know how to channelize my thoughts and how to, counter this inequality. To be very honest, it was not violence at that time that I was thinking a lot about. But by late 1980s, there is a activist women's group in Mysore, where I belong, which is called the Samata Vedike. This is an autonomous women's group, which initially started as a study group, but it was also the time when, the idea that women need not feel ashamed to speak of violence which they were suffering in the family started gaining ground. And so women's groups started taking up at least cases of, those days it used to be called case, of women who were courageous to come and speak about what they were going through. So my journey with Samata Vedike began, as I said, in the late 1980s. We used to meet every Wednesday, and there were a few women who used to come there and speak about what they were going through. So that for the last, almost 4 decades now, I have been working in this area. And now, on the one hand, violence, we have laws that have tried to prevent it. But on the other, violence in new forms is happening.
So how do you see the evolution of the concept of violence, like in your research or in your field activities? How have you seen this evolution of violence?
See, I do not always associate violence only with physical abuse. Generally, that is the feeling that most people have. For me, deprivation of the rights to women to enjoy the freedom given by the Constitution. It may be denial of right to education, denial of right to dignified life, and being deprived of the resources both in the family and society is also violence. But patriarchy, has been so deep-rooted in our system that abusing women, physically torturing them is kind of considered a normal behavior. Even the act, you will be aware, took a long time to be passed only because the argument was that it's after all, the spouse who is beating his wife and he can do that because he has a right. But it was only because of the struggle of the autonomous women's movement that domestic violence, came into public sphere. And more women started coming out and speaking about it because they felt that it's not, a matter of shame that you talk of the abuse that you are going through. So violence now expresses itself in many forms. The word intimate partner came because this was happening within the family circle. Generally, the word intimate partner violence is used interchangeably with domestic violence. And most of the cases of intimate partner violence are cases of spousal abuse only. But then violence can take place, in live-in relationships, and even, when there are friendships between two persons of belonging to opposite sex, there can be intimate partner violence. So basically, the word simply conveys the meaning that somebody who is close to you, the relationship may be a marital relationship or a relationship outside marriage, them using that space to abuse the partner is intimate partner violence.
Ma'am, so when you talk about young boys and girls being involved in creating awareness and all, so do you have any experiences from your field visits that you can share with us that you felt challenging or that this thing should be addressed in the society right now?
No, see, many times what happens is this violence starts in the family.
Yes.
And the gender bias, it kind of takes shape in the family. So when young boys see their mothers or sisters or women relatives being abused by men in their family, they take it as an accepted form of behavior. So I have seen not just one case or two cases where the sons became abusive. They threatened their mothers, demanded that the mother gives money for alcohol addiction, etc., or have fun, as it may be called in their language. So, I think the family has a sense of responsibility, especially now in the days of this social media's influence on the younger generation, to inculcate those values where they are first trained to accept the fact that,
Ma'am, so do you think that policymakers should have this distinction between intimate partner violence and domestic violence? And is it important for the policymakers or even lawyers or advocates to have this distinction in order to defend people or even protect women at cost here?
you see, domestic violence, I would say, is the most prevalent form of intimate partner violence. But it cannot be restricted only to that. See, in the recent past, I have been thinking a lot about this concept as such. See, the partnership can be between parents and children, between siblings, between friends, and of course between spouses. So if you extend the meaning of that term intimate partner violence, it includes all members of a family and a close circle, which may include peer group, which may include relatives, and all those people with whom we have those, bond, if you may use that word. So by and large, most cases of intimate partner violence are cases of domestic violence. But it is important for lawmakers to realize that there can be violence in same-sex relationships, in within the family, where you see, we were in Belgaum, where we were doing a big project on intimate partner violence. There was this case of a person who is 60 plus, who was actually given a death penalty by the judge because this was a community of poor people and the parents used to go out for wage labor. So a 3.5-year-old girl, a relative, was left in his care. They thought that it is safe to leave the granddaughter with the grandfather. And this man raped that little girl, and of course it came into the public domain and she was punished. So there are cases where siblings commit violence on their sisters or cousins. So probably the word intimate partner violence has to be revisited. This is what I think, and not be restricted to abuse of the wife by the husband only. It can be the other way around also, because in the recent past we have come across cases where, these are very small in number when compared to the abuse that men commit on women, where women have also, committed acts of violence against men. So I think you have to approach this word with a very open mind.
Ma'am, so when you talked about cases that's happening in Belgaum and in your field research, so do you think that our existing laws like the Protection of Women from Domestic Violence Act or even our penal provisions like Bharat Nyaya Sanhita that's recently enacted, so do you think all these laws are sufficient enough to address this problem of intimate partner violence, or do you think that we need amendments to it or something like that?
See, if I may say so, the implementation of the law definitely depends on the person who is involved. and also about the awareness. In our own project, I now find that only about 10% of those who were suffering intimate partner violence knew about this domestic violence prohibition, prevention, whatever. I don't like the word prevention because it has to be prohibited, it has to be stopped. Anyway, the 90% did not even know about this act. So I would say that it's very important for women and men and also children to be informed about their legal rights. And law per se often cannot achieve the desired end because everybody doesn't have the same kind of support structures, because there are many who don't want to take these cases forward. They just give it up halfway.
Yes, ma'am. So I also wanted to ask you about the factors that affects the victims, like such as the social factors, patriarchy, dominance, and all these dependency on family members for even a standard of life. So do you think this will all affect in a certain way for the victims to approach authorities if they are facing something?
Definitely, there is no doubt about this. That's what I meant when I said support structures. See, I have always been saying that to walk out of an abusive home, a woman or a young girl, whoever it may be, requires an alternate place to stay. Many women continue to live in an abusive atmosphere simply because they have nowhere to go. So that support structure, institutions, that help women to get out of an abusive relationship and go and live in a safe place, that system should be strengthened. Of course, we do have the Santvana and those one-stop centers, which work 24/7. And there are quite a few women who come there. But it is seen that those institutions also require the kind of financial and human resource support from the state and the civil society also. See, whenever you talk of violence, you immediately go to the police and talk of the legal system. But I think that outside the legal system, we have the civil society, maybe NGOs, maybe the people themselves, who have to create institutions or support institutions which will actually open up to receive women who don't want to continue to stay in that abusive home. The other thing is they don't have the skills to earn a livelihood. In our own project data, we find that majority of them have started working after they left the abusive homes. And in everybody's case, the parental home is not open. Sometimes they are thrown out. So it's not just the law and those who suffer, it's a question of having a supportive parental family, a supportive civil society, a supportive group of institutions like all these short stay homes, more Santvana centers, more one-stop centers, and of course institutions that are created by the corporate world itself.
Yes. Ma'am, so when you are talking about institutions, do you think Women's Commission will also be included because they support women? State Women's Commission, they support women, abused women who can go and complain there, and they'll take over the cases.
I'm not sure whether they have taken over every case, because I have been in the movement for the last 4 decades. And of course, the idea of a National Women's Commission and the State Women's Commission is good. But then, when it comes to the functioning of these institutions, they are also not free from many kinds of biases. That's why you see, whatever change has been brought out in the fight for gender equality is by the initiative and the struggles of the autonomous women's movement, which is very strong in India, especially between 2000 and 2010. Most of the laws that support women were formed. But I want to tell you that when this Domestic Violence Act, Prevention Prohibition Act was being proposed, it was the draft, was sent to several institutions across the country. Because I was director of the Center for Women's Studies in the University of Mysore at that time, and it came there for discussion, for debate. So we said, what is there to discuss? You can't have a woman beaten like this. And in the parliament, the discussion and debate went on for so many years. And there were people who said there is no need for this law, because after all, it is the husband, who is beating the wife. It is okay. In fact, there was even a discussion about making a distinction between occasional wife batterers and habitual wife batterers. And it was the women's movement that strongly protested and said, our fight is against battering. In fact, there was a big argument about whether wife battering should be considered a punishable offense at all. So first is a change in the mindset that is required, respect relationships. If that is done with or without the law, people will not use abusive language, abusive kind of actions against their partners. See, there are many families, where sons abuse the mothers, beat them up and demand money. For what? For drinking, for, pampering all those undesirable habits that they may have acquired. So I seriously think that we have to look at that term from a very broad perspective and include all behavior in the family, in close networks, if I may use that word, where partners are being abused.
Ma'am, so when we talk about the institutions that protect all these women rights and all, even state funded as well. So how do you think they're functioning right now in the world?
Of course, the experience is different from one country to the other and from one society to the other. If I may talk of India, these commissions were appointed by the state and the country as such. By and large, they came into existence to support, the rights of women, and they created definitely a space where women who are facing abuse of various forms can go. So definitely it created a sense of confidence. But as far as functioning is concerned, I must tell you that they are also functioning in a patriarchal setup. Of course, barring a few instances when these commissions have truly come to the rescue of women, there are many instances where actually they have not supported the right cause. It may be political interference, or it may be that they themselves lack the gender sensitivity to deal with such cases. So I won't say that they are the only answer to the problem of violence. I say that the state, and I am talking of civil society, which includes media, which includes, corporate houses, which I also think, because they function in our society, they should have the responsibility to support these institutions. See, Santvana and Sakhi centers are definitely, closely associated with the Department of Women and Child Development. But many of them don't have the kind of financial support. I know of many counselors who are working without getting any salary for months on end. But yet, they work 24/7. And we must not forget that they are always under a threat. The same is the case with Anganwadi workers. When there is a case of abuse, domestic abuse or rape or child marriage or sexual abuse, the information comes to them. And in many instances, they are threatened because the feeling is that it is the Anganwadi worker who has gone and reported the case. So, it's very important to create a safety network, as I call that, around those who are fighting. Even those in the autonomous women's movement keep receiving threats. But then you need courageous hearts, who don't care. But I must also tell you that prior to the 1980s, if women were abused, there was no place to go. They did not know what to do. But today, both the law as a formal system and as an informal support system, women's groups, all these centers are doing their work.
Ma'am, so what do you propose? Like, you've said that these work under a threat. So what do you propose as to having a safe network, or
Yeah.
some recommendations as to how these institutions can become more effective?
Now, I think that I have always, advocated for street level interventions. See, you cannot always centralize all these interventions. So it's very important to train, to create and support groups of young boys and girls, students, community elders, to send out a clear message that they are not going to tolerate violence. You see, look at the self-help group movement in India, which is a very strong movement, and all villages have self-help groups. Yes. But they are mostly treated as, savings institutions. But a self-help group can function as a nodal center, and it has been done in many places where, a woman can go if she is under threat. And so it's very important to create street level, village level, neighborhood level institutions that will stand as a safety network to those facing abuse. It's not done in most places. And the Santwana and Sakhi centers are also working very hard. As I told you, they work round the clock. But many times there is an acute shortage of staff or the counselors. They don't have money, and they also live on constant threat,
Yes.
So it's very important for a community to get together, and we should start considering the prevalence of violence as a shame on our society. So I believe that it's also important to train youngsters, students, and spread awareness about this first in our own families, in our neighborhoods, in our street. That is how you can control this menace. There is equality between men and women, and nobody has the right to abuse anybody. Whether it's a daughter or a son, they must be trained to question a father or whoever it may be in the family who is abusing women. Well, I have come across cases where children have taken the side of the mother, taken them out, if they have the resources, of course. But in most cases, it has so happened that they are an eyewitness to violence being perpetrated against female members of their families. So they take it as normal.
Ma'am, so when you are talking about the age of social media, so now new technology has come in. So violence definition has to be evolved with the technology. So how do you think that we have to look about? So we have all these helplines and apps that government authorities are continuously working through. So what do you think violence should be defined as in the technological era?
See, technology, as we have always glorified technology. As a student of sociology itself, I'll say we have been taught that technology is the most powerful instrument of social change. Well, it's not completely untrue. It is true to a great extent. However, nobody imagined that social media will make this kind of an impact. Of course, it's up to us to use it in the right way or the wrong way. But then how do you distinguish between what is right and what is wrong? Those notions themselves are undergoing change. We do have, of course, agencies in the police department, and there are many agencies that are trying to control crime that is being perpetrated by using social media. But it's definitely true that the access to social media has led to a lot of young people, and I'm saying this out of great concern and anxiety, using the freedom that social media has given them to, challenge familial control. In our own field area, we found that there were a number of school-going children who have run out of their homes, who do not go to school, leave their house early in the morning, take a public transport bus. And of course, their parents are thinking that they would have gone to school, but they are not there. So they get into relationships, and even in these relationships, there is violence. And what will happen to them, once they are, of course, located, the police will take them, they are sent to balamandras, or sometimes parents take them. And men are also, they don't have any free legal aid. Many of them go to jail. But it is, I think, now very important. We know the problem is there.
Yes.
For all of us to create that,
Safe
sensitivity among different age groups, and tell the parents also that it's not okay to be too restrictive. We found that in many cases children have done this because it's a backlash against parental authority and abuse. So, well, we have to keep on trying, that's all. First is to give an awareness of the rights and share all helpline numbers in public place. Actually, this works quite well, to be honest with you. I have tried.
Yes.
This helpline number 811, if you call, it goes to the Bangalore office, and then they will ask you where you are located and connect you.
Okay.
Sometimes, yes, there are failures, but impact of social media cannot be controlled. I think there is now many schools, I think don't allow their children to use phones, etc., when they come to school. Now, the feeling that I got was that children in private schools, do not have that kind of freedom which those traveling by public transport and coming from their villages, etc., have, because here they go by the school bus and then they deposit their mobiles, then they go to the class, again dropped back. What they do after they go home, of course, is their problem. But many rural children are now becoming victims of this.
Ma'am, so do you think that there is a divide between urban and rural areas when it comes to intimate partner violence, or even children being involved in such kind of violences?
No, actually, violence cuts across barriers of class, rural, urban, locations, caste, religion, as I told you. But only thing is, in the urban area, there is a stronger support system as compared to rural areas. So, abuse is abuse. Very rich women are facing abuse in their families, and very poor women are also facing abuse in their families. In fact, there have been cases when, tribal women have got together to, counter violence by their spouses, because they find that it is impossible to, tolerate this. But urban areas, there is more access to information, and there are more institutions located in urban areas where, these people can go to seek support. But the form of violence, the nature of violence is all the same. And in urban areas, this technology-based violence is quite severe. Yeah. And so that's what I find.
That was today's podcast on intimate partner violence. Violence just doesn't show up in intimate relationships. It starts with unnoticed control. With hearing to lived realities, we understand what safety and dignity truly mean. Change begins when harm is noticed even before it is visible. I hope this message was clear in the podcast.